they are going to be very thin on the ground, and it would have been wonderful to have the support of Harry and Meghan if relations hadn't disintegrated. Obviously, I think the two sides hate each other, certainly in the case of William and Kate and Harry and Meghan. So I don't see Harry and Meghan coming back. I wonder, though, whether Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie might be a useful addition to the lineup.
Well, let's speak now to Jack Royston, who's Chief Royal Correspondent for Newsweek. Good morning.
Good morning.
I mean, this is a tough year for the royals, isn't it? Off the back of the diagnosis of the King having cancer as well.
It's a hugely tough year. In actual fact, I think way tougher than the kind of bombshells from Harry and Meghan. I mean, health, when it falls apart, really hits you very, very hard. So I think really, obviously, the Queen passing away was an incredibly sad moment for the royals. But I think the shock of these two cancer diagnoses in the first part of the year will have caught the royals completely off guard. And I can kind of understand why Kate and William maybe didn't necessarily handle everything in a perfect way, because they were probably absolutely reeling from what they just found out.
And also it was made clear, wasn't it, that initially it was felt that it was non-cancerous and it was only in post-operative tests that it became relevant. The information changed, but nonetheless, there has been a level of criticism about the vacuum of information and criticism that maybe the Prince and Princess of Wales didn't cover this in a communications way, in the best way. But ultimately, they were trying to consider their young family, weren't they?
Yes, exactly. If they had done some kind of a low-key video, they didn't necessarily need to delve into what the actual health issue was at an earlier stage, and they might have taken the heat out of some of the completely wild and crazy speculation on social media. But obviously, that would have had a benefit to it. But they had their own things they were dealing with privately. So they obviously felt at that time like they just couldn't face doing that. I don't think anyone will hold that against them in the long term, because, I mean, there will be huge amounts of sympathy for Kate. It's just one of those situations where, it would have been better in that moment if they had been able to do it. But in the long run, everybody now knows exactly what's going on and why things were so difficult for them.
You talk about that wild and crazy speculation. I mean, in the US, there have been US talk show hosts wading in on all of the rumours, the speculation. And there are different rules of operation in the US. Here in the UK, for example, no one buys pat pictures of the royal family, whereas they do in the US. Is there some sense of reflection, because obviously Newsweek is a US publication that you work for, is there some sense of reflection on, maybe people went a bit too far, maybe people delved too much, maybe people didn't give them the privacy that they deserved?
Yes, in some corners. There are also other corners where people are kind of standing their ground almost and kind of trying to deflect back onto the royal family and say, well, we did nothing wrong. It was all because they made PR mistakes and stuff like that. So I think probably some of the bigger names will be, the Stephen Colberts and the Andy Cohens maybe will be pausing slightly longer to reflect on their own actions. But I think some of the kind of, the Twitter level, lower level people are actually sticking to their guns. I think what will happen, though, is they'll get less interaction, they'll get lower viewer counts, and they won't have the public on their side anymore.
I wonder what lessons can be learnt by the royal family in light of social media. We live in a different world. It's not a world where you can just keep things private, because if you're in the public eye, then people will speculate. It doesn't make it right. Unfortunately, it is just the reality of social media. And I just wonder, if the royal family were to go through something as awful as this again, if there are lessons to be learnt in how to deal with it, maybe in a different way.
Yeah, social media is an ecosystem. Back in the days when it was just the mainstream media, the royal communications team would be able to speak to newspaper editors, speak to broadcasters. They would already have those contacts, so it'd be very easy to do. Those organizations are managed in a top-down way. There's somebody who's in charge, so you can just try and speak to them privately and kind of get people on board. But social media is like a living thing. You can't talk to millions of people and have a quiet word with them and ask them to rein it in. It's not possible. But there is a saying in PR which actually predates social media and was as true in the old days as it is now, which is that you should always do quickly what you will do inevitably. So in other words, if it's inevitable that at some point you will have to do the video, then the earlier you do it, the more you save yourself the pain of people saying horrible things in the short term. But William and Kate will survive the fact that happened. it's very unfortunate, and I'm sure it would have put a huge amount of emotional pressure on them during what was already a very difficult time. Doing a video earlier could have avoided that, but they'll survive it. And maybe, yeah, perhaps Royal Communications will come away with a lesson learned.
There's clearly a human toll here on a family with 3 young children, but there's also practical considerations for the royal family, a royal family that is already, well, quite depleted in numbers. Harry and Meghan obviously decided to step back. We know that the king is undergoing his own cancer treatment. Prince Andrew has been pushed to the side after what he said in that Newsnight interview. You just wonder, this is going to be a struggle. Prince William, of course, will be going back to work, but he's not going to want to go far. He's not going to go doing a tour in Canada, is he? He's going to want to be close to his family. And I just wonder how difficult this is in a purely practical sense for the royal family. I mean, the Queen is out there on her own at the moment, sort of being the front and centre of the royal family.
Yeah, absolutely. And there have also been kind of noises, rumors and rumblings that maybe the Queen and the Prince of Wales have not always had a clear understanding between each other of who the number two is, who's second in command, when the King is out of action. So they definitely need to make sure they're both working off the same page and they both understand, how the roles work. But yeah, they are going to be very thin on the ground, and it would have been wonderful to have the support of Harry and Meghan if relations hadn't disintegrated. Obviously, I think the two sides hate each other, certainly in the case of William and Kate and Harry and Meghan. So I don't see Harry and Meghan coming back. I wonder, though, whether Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie might be a useful addition to the lineup.
That's interesting. So you think that because there is a certain lack of, we know that the Princess Royal is the hardest working member of the royal family. We also know that Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh have been working really hard. But you kind of think that of the younger age band, that there aren't many royals, are there?
No, exactly. And it's the younger royals who get all the headlines and get all the pictures and the attention. And, there's some great projects, Beatrice and Eugenie between them could, I think, contribute something really valuable. There's the anti-slavery project that's already there, which could just be turned into a royal project. So yeah, I think that could be really beneficial for them. I suppose it's about partly how flexible they can be. The monarchy isn't always flexible. It's a very old institution. It's part of the reason why British people love it. But if they could bring a little bit of flexibility in there, then I think actually bringing Beatrice and Eugenie into the fold, if they are willing, could actually really help the royals quite a lot.
Really interesting. Jack, thank you for speaking to us. That's Jack Royston. He's Chief Royal Correspondent for Newsweek. It's worth saying, of course, we should remember that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have said they wish health and healing to the Princess of Wales after her statement yesterday.